first speaker I'd like to introduce is a lady. She's been a senator for 14 years for the Northern Territory. She's currently chairing the Senate's Legal and Constitutional on the committee. And she's also lived at Yirrkala for 5 years and worked as a school teacher. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Trish Crossin.
Namari, morning everybody. It's an absolute privilege to be here today. Can I just begin by paying my respects to the traditional owners of this land, and I guess unlike many people who pay their respects, I have the absolute privilege of having known quite a number of those traditional owners, both past and present. I think you are very privileged, those people who are perhaps here at Gama and in East Arnhem for the first time, to share in this culture and make the most of your next couple of days, because you will certainly leave here being a richer person for having met and got involved with these people. To you, Galarrwuy and Jawa, thank you for the invitation to be here today. I also want to acknowledge Alfredo from Timor-Leste, welcome. And to you, Jack, happy birthday. I must have missed a party last night. I want to acknowledge Kim Hill as well, the CEO of the Northern Land Council. Now, of course, you would have been expecting Martin Ferguson this morning, but Martin is pretty sick with the flu, and I'll have to say, knowing Martin's commitment to the resources industry and his knowledge of the Northern Territory and East Arnhem, he must be pretty sick to not be here. So I spoke to him on Thursday afternoon, and he was struggling with a voice then and just didn't feel he could make the trip up here. So he does extend his apologies, and if he hadn't have been so sick, he most definitely would have been here to network with all the important people that I know are here in the resources industry. So his presentation today is about the resources boom and a stepping stone to an Indigenous future. I want to also, on behalf of Martin's, on his behalf, to also, before I start with his speech, to congratulate the Youthu Indi Foundation for organising again another vibrant cultural and academic forum for people around this country. So, reflecting on this spirit of coming together, I'm going to focus on how Aboriginal people can continue to join in and drive the resources industry's success, not only in the Northern Territory but in the entire nation. Following the signing last year of the landmark $700 million Gove bauxite mine agreement with Rio Tinto, Galarrwuy Yunupingu spoke appropriately of a shared future. This agreement has formed the basis of a new era of respect and recognition between the operators of the Gove bauxite mine and aluminium refinery, now of course known as Pacific Aluminium, and Indigenous people, an era in which there will be real and substantial opportunities for Indigenous economic development and employment. As you know, this agreement is just one of the many such agreements between mining companies and traditional owners. And indeed, while there are no official statistics, we are pretty confident that the majority of mining operations in Australia now involve agreements between the miner and the traditional owners. To give you an idea of the scale of opportunities flowing from the current expansion of the resources sector, I can advise that there are over 100 advanced mineral and energy projects with a combined capital expenditure of more than $270 billion being progressed throughout Australia. And there are a further 295 less advanced projects under construction that would add significantly in the capacity in the second half of this decade. In another sign of future confidence, spending on exploration for minerals and energy was worth, in fact, $6.4 billion in 2010-11, 6% higher than the previous year. So we are in a rapid period of growth. And there are certainly many years of resources activity to come, and the real prospect of long-term jobs and business opportunities with resources companies. And Arnhem Land has the potential to play a major role in this boom, with significant identified resources of gold, uranium, iron ore, lead and manganese. So last year's Groves Agreement included the creation of a new fund, allowing locals to pursue business and contracting opportunities and social enterprise development. The government welcomes the creation of these kinds of funds, which are helping spread the benefit of the resources developments throughout the entire local community. Indigenous people have lower rates of business ownership than other Australians do, we know that for a fact. However, encouragingly, Indigenous Australians who do own their own businesses, and perhaps you may not know this, are more likely than non-Indigenous Australians to still be in that business after 3 or 4 years. So forming joint ventures with resources companies and service providers is the best way of starting a new venture, because it helps spread the associated costs and risks. There are also many avenues of government support for those looking to gain a foothold in the industry, and that's the role that we play. So we have the Resources Sector Supplier Advisory Forum, which provides high-level leadership in linking suppliers to business opportunities. Individuals can provide practical advice through this forum in areas such as tendering, financing and forming partnerships with larger companies. But there are also wider opportunities that resource development can provide a community. Service industries are needed, such as transport, catering and construction. And for example, the Gove Agreement is expected to provide new support for Indigenous operated timber and housing businesses in this region. You may well hear more about that over the next 2 days. But one of the most tangible benefits from the resources industry expansion has to be the jobs that it generates. It is estimated that by 2016, mining operations will need 89,000 more workers than are currently employed since 2010. And as a government, we are very eager to see as many of these positions as possible go to Indigenous people. Wages from the resources industry can sustain local economies and provide lifelong skills that create wealth for generations to come. The National Resources Sector Workforce Strategy reflects this focus, with many of its programs aimed at improving relevant skills and education and establishing firm career pathways for Indigenous Australians. The government, my government has also established an Indigenous economic development strategy to help Indigenous people get an education, to find that job and to start a business. And we recently provided $650 million to bolster the National Indigenous Employment Program and the Indigenous Youth Career Pathways Program, funding right through to 2015-16. So these programs have already exceeded targets for the current financial year. They are popular and they're working, with more than 35,000 people actually commencing work and training during the period. More than 89,000 Indigenous Australians have commenced work and training under this Indigenous Employment Program since 2009. And in the resources industry, if you want to break that down, it includes more than 5,100 jobs and 7,500 training positions. We work closely with Resources Company to achieve these employment and training outcomes. We have a Memorandum of Understanding with the Minerals Council of Australia that focuses on improving employment and enterprise development opportunities for Indigenous Australians in mining and associated industries. And also, under Martin's portfolio, he looks after tourism. And perhaps if I just touch on that for a minute, because the resources industry expansion also creates new opportunities for tourism development. Recent research from Tourism Research Australia found that the mining boom has actually largely complemented the tourism growth across Australia. The study found that demand for Australia's resources had boosted business travel in particular, with benefits for aviation, food services, hospitality and accommodation providers. Indigenous businesses are perfectly placed to take advantage of these trends and to gain a larger share of the international tourism dollar in the process. Indigenous culture, of course, is seen as a key point of difference in the competitive global tourism market. Another study by Tourism Research Australia found that almost 1 million tourists participated in an Indigenous tourism activity in Australia last year. And most of these, about 70%, came from overseas. The research also established that Indigenous tourism visitors stayed longer and spent many more money than anyone else. And I'm pleased to say that the government is again offering considerable support to the development of Indigenous tourism ventures, particularly here in Arnhem Land. We recently provided, of course, the $825,000 funding to the Youthu Indi Aboriginal Tourism Corporation to develop a tourism master plan for the region. I'm very familiar with that tourism operation, and I guess the guides and the tours they provide to people to outstations, and I've met a number of tourists who have actually taken up that opportunity and going to those homelands, and I'm certainly well aware of what happens out at with Timmy Barawanga and his tourism operation. I could be a bit cheeky and perhaps suggest that that's probably because of the good teachers he might have had 30 years ago, but I won't be so brash to do that. Anyway, this funding seeks to develop up to 50 new tourism businesses within a 20-year period, keeping local people connected to their culture while achieving economic development. And you can see it happening before your eyes here in East Arnhem. Youthu Indi experts attract a further $2.25 million in corporate funding over the next 3 years. And then, of course, there's a very substantial contribution to the Garma Festival itself, which makes Arnhem Land tourism every year, and the recognition of Indigenous culture that it creates not only across Australia but around the world. So while encouraging development of Australia's mineral and petroleum resources for their economic and employment benefits, we must also be aware of the need to do so responsibly and in a sustainable manner. Indigenous people obviously place a great deal of value on the protection of the natural environment as the holder of their stories and of those of their ancestors. Australia's Environment Protection and Biodiversity Act and equivalent state and territory-based legislation provides for rigorous assessment of any activities that may significantly impact the natural environment. Miners are required to undertake all activities in a sustainable manner and engage effectively with governments and communities throughout the life of projects. This includes rehabilitation efforts and should ideally leave mine sites in a better condition than when they were found. So there are very good business opportunities in the rehabilitation process. Traditional owners as custodians of the land are particularly well placed to achieve both good environmental and profitable outcomes in undertaking such work. So let me just say in conclusion that the resources industry, with its $260 billion pipeline of projects, is creating immense opportunities for Indigenous people across Australia. This includes direct employment in mines and mining support sectors, or leveraging off their successes through the creation of new tourism businesses and other ventures. The current resources boom can be a huge and lasting leap forward in economic circumstances of Australia's Indigenous community. Government, industry and Indigenous people need to work together to ensure that we don't miss this opportunity. Indigenous, and so can I just say though, in concluding, on behalf of Martin, that I think his message is this, that the government is well placed, as you can see, to support people to get into these businesses, whether it be in the mining industry, in rehabilitation through land care or through the tourism industry. We have worked hard, and Martin has worked extremely hard with the resources sector to develop these agreements and to provide the basis for Indigenous people to get involved. There is an opportunity here, I think, as we talk about spreading the resources of the resources boom and the mineral boom. But truly, I think when you have a look around at what's happening here in East Arnhem, it's starting to become a reality. Working together, let's not miss the opportunity, and I thank you very much on behalf of Martin to be able to present his speech to you today. Thank you.